Living in Europe is getting worse. And while for years Europeans have enjoyed some of the highest levels of livability in the world, there are new challenges to people living in Western European countries, while at the same time, Eastern European cities are seeing remarkable gains. Every year, The Economist publishes a list of the most livable cities in the world. This year, again, the top 10 was dominated by Europe. Now, from the Nomad Capitalist perspective, almost all of those cities have extremely high taxes in their country and really no way to mitigate that, meaning that they're not really as livable for someone who has the means to make a lot of places livable, including lower tax options. But what interested me was that we're starting to see cracks in the veneer of some of the Western European countries. You're seeing higher crime. You're seeing some of the impacts of higher taxes. You're seeing more competition from places like Asia that are creeping up into the rankings. And you're seeing Eastern European cities, some of the ones that we talk about as certainly less developed, but more freedom-oriented, lower tax places to live for people who like Europe, they're increasing the rankings. Here's what The Economist says. European cities, especially in the western half of the continent, are generally splendid places to live. Our sister company, EIU, assesses the livability of cities globally by measuring how they stack up in 5 categories: cultural and environment, education, healthcare, infrastructure, and stability. And so if you're a high earner, or if you have a net worth, certainly it's hard to duplicate culture anywhere in the world, although you can live in a place that has less culture and travel to Europe and enjoy it. That's one thing we would say here at Nomad Capitalist is go to high tax places with tons of regulations that are bad for business and be a tourist. Go to California, go to France, don't buy property there, don't get into their tax net, don't, run your business there. Just go and visit, go and enjoy. I was skiing in France recently, had a very nice time. I wouldn't buy a property in France, and I certainly wouldn't want to pay French taxes. But culture is indeed hard to duplicate, as is the environment. Education is something that you can get good education pretty much anywhere that you go. And if you're a high earner, you can afford to have private education, private tutors. To me, that's a case for going to more tax-friendly, business-friendly places. Healthcare is actually much better. You're actually seeing a lot of people in Europe complain about the quality of their healthcare, how long they have to wait, the quality of it. You go to more tax-friendly places such as Asia, where you're actually seeing a lot of competition in the rankings. Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, Singapore, great hubs for medical tourism. You get in and out in museum-like facilities at a fraction of the cost in Europe. And you can either live in those countries and get great healthcare and have very tax-friendly environments, or you could just travel there for healthcare when you need it. Infrastructure is indeed something that's valuable, although I can't tell you in a lot of the, again, tax-friendly places that I go to that infrastructure is bad. I look at a place like Malaysia, the infrastructure is excellent for driving around, even for public transportation. And stability, again, Malaysia, Singapore, Panama, very stable places. So what I find interesting every year about this Economist report is that you have Vienna. They're ranked number 1. I love Vienna. I love visiting, have the food, have wines. I think some of the most underrated wines in Europe. Been there for Christmas. Great place to go. Would I want to live there? For a number of reasons, no. And I think what this report actually doesn't say beyond just tax consequences is for all the 15 or so years that I've been visiting Vienna, every time I meet someone from somewhere else who tells me how difficult it is to integrate socially into society, people are a bit more closed off, they're a bit more standoffish. Doesn't mean they're bad, but it's not as easy to integrate as it might be in a place, again, like in Asia. Southeast Asia, I think it's easier to find people to become friends with. Latin America, if you speak the language, easier to become friends to people. Eastern Europe, a country like Georgia, I've made so many friends. It was so remarkably easy, quite frankly. So, talk about livability. Some of these places that have the top rankings in Europe, I think it's hard to go there and create a social circle. But what I find interesting beyond that, from kind of the quantitative view, is if you are in a normal job, then sure, Vienna has better public transportation than Bucharest does, which is one of the lower ranked places. It is further east. But if you're a nomad capitalist, if you're the kind of person that we work with, you have $500,000 a year or income or more, you've got $1 million liquid or more, can you not get some of those things in places where you're not giving away 40 and 50% of your tax? And is there actually not just some kind of veneer that the healthcare you're getting is actually that great, or the infrastructure is actually so much better. Because what you're seeing is places in Eastern Europe that are improving, and we're going to come to that in a moment. The Economist says that European cities consistently top the rankings and continue to do so. Again, more in the global top 10 than any other region. But the relative ranking of some cities has declined. Again, because living standards in Asia and Australasia have at least recovered from the pandemic slump. And we'll go into that as well. Our charts share which European countries scored the best. Vienna, Copenhagen, Zurich, Geneva, Helsinki. Switzerland, one of my top 2 countries in Europe. It just works. It also happens to be one of the places, one of the cantons in Switzerland that does not have a special tax deal for foreigners. And so is it so much superior that if you make $5 million a year, you're going to go and pay their millions of dollars in taxes, when you could go somewhere else and pay 0 or 100,000 or something like that? You can go to Milan and you can pay 100,000 euros flat tax in Italy. Is Italy, for someone who makes millions of dollars a year, 95% worse than Zurich? If I had to choose, I would rather live in Zurich than Milan. But if I'm moving somewhere, this is the Nomad Capitalist. We're not talking where I'm from in the United States, which I think is also an overrated place. But if I'm going to choose, sure, Zurich might have some kind of edge over Milan or over any other city in Italy in terms of livability. Things just work. The post works. Everything's so efficient there. But am I going to pay 20 times the amount to live there? Probably not. And perhaps in Italy, I'll find more of the social circle that I want. I was just talking to a banker in Switzerland about a year ago. He said, yeah, you know what? Everyone who moves here tells me how hard it is to make friends. Doesn't mean it's bad, but that's, again, isn't that livability? The rest of these, if you live in Helsinki, congratulations. You live in the 5th most livable city in the world, according to The Economist. I don't see too many people moving to Finland, especially high net worth individuals. Maybe you go there this summer and you have a lake house. But in terms of where you're living the entire year, to me, these places, okay, Geneva at number 4, they do have a tax deal. If you have a mid to upper seven-figure income, it starts to become competitive, in my opinion, if you want to go there. And yet there are people who would say, no, but Geneva's no Zurich. So let's look at most improved on the other hand. Now, I'm not saying that if you have that $5 or $10 million income, you should go to these cities. But I'll tell you where I think that they factor in. Bucharest came up 8.7 points. So I mentioned they're at 73.7 versus Vienna's 98.4. So that's a bit of a difference, about a 20% downgrade. But they're up 8.7 points. So I guess that would be from 65 to 73.7. Basically they've eliminated about a third of the gap between the two of them. Bratislava up 7.8. Warsaw up 6.6. Okay, Stuttgart in Germany, 4.6. Belgrade in Serbia, a country we've talked about, a country where we filmed in, a country where I spend a little bit of my time, up 4.6. And so Belgrade and Bucharest are right at about the same levels. Bratislava is up to 84.7. That makes them competitive with a few cities in Western Europe. So what you're seeing is a narrowing of the gap. Belgrade, Bucharest, Sofia, even Athens, kind of in southeastern Europe. They are in the lower levels. Some of the Italian cities, Prague, Warsaw, Lisbon, some northern UK cities. I saw Edinburgh fell a lot this year. They're in the middle level. And then you've got your Viennas, your Zurichs, your Paris, your Amsterdams, Brussels. I don't know who's moving to Brussels, but those are in kind of the upper echelon. But you're seeing that the ones in the lower level are getting closer. Now, what do you get in Belgrade that you don't get in Vienna? Well, go back a couple of years. I spent some time in Belgrade in 2020. It was relatively open. You could relatively live your life. Vienna, it was a mess. You get a more laid-back lifestyle. Now, if you live in Vienna, if you move there, and if you want to become a citizen, you won't be allowed to be a dual citizen. In some of these Eastern European countries, I think those are more interesting passports to aspire to, particularly the ones that have some of the same EU rights. So, Romania, for example. Some of those countries may be harder to get citizenship in, but these are the kinds of considerations that I have. if I'm a successful person, yes, I want to live somewhere that's livable. By the way, I'll tell you this. If you go to Belgrade, I celebrated American Thanksgiving with a few friends. I had a lovely dinner. We sat there from 4:30 in the afternoon to almost midnight. Show me a restaurant in Western Europe where you can do that. To me, that's an area of livability. I don't want to go in, okay, hello, you're here at 6 o'clock. By 7:59, you need to get the hell out. Like, I want to go and enjoy myself and have, some great waiter as a throwback to a previous time, serving us great food and great wine and just having a great time. For me, that more laid back, you can meet people, that's worth something. But I'm also looking at, what kind of freedom do I have? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a base in Western Europe and a base in Eastern Europe. That could be a home, it could be a residence permit, it could be a citizenship. But I'll tell you what, if some bad stuff was happening in the world, there's a number of cases which I'd rather be in Belgrade than in Vienna. I like Vienna. But I think there are some cases when definitely you wouldn't want to be there. Now, The Economist says the following. The chart toppers have not changed. Yes, every single bloody year, Vienna is at the top of the list. And I've been saying for years, again, great if you have a 90,000 euro job. If you're running a great business, probably not so great. So we always have to understand who is the audience. Vienna retained its position as the most livable city, 98.4 out of 100. Copenhagen, Zurich, and Geneva, unsurprising runners-up. These people really live in their own world where everyone must want the same things. Everyone wants to get on a tram car and go to the downtown. Everyone wants, I don't know what else, the infrastructure. Everyone wants the same museums. If you don't agree with The Economist, then you don't enjoy livability. The picturesque cities of Budapest, Prague, and Bratislava, which are coming up among the kind of people that we talk to, Budapest is going to be a hub for digital nomads at least, had the highest scores in Eastern Europe. The eastern cities of Bratislava, Bucharest, and Warsaw, along with Stuttgart, were the cities that saw the most improvement. But most surprising is that several European cities were among the biggest decliners in global rankings, more having to do with improvements elsewhere than with problems in Europe. Now, we talk to Europeans all the time, successful people. They're seeing problems in their country. They're seeing taxes going up. They're seeing services going down. They're seeing politicians that don't care about them. Believe me, there are some problems in Europe. There's problems all over the Western world. That doesn't mean it's terrible, but it means it's heading in the wrong direction in many cases. And so what we have in the other part of the world is those countries are starting to go down. Yes, they have their problems, but what's really influencing it is other countries are increasing. Edinburgh, dropped by 23 places in the global pecking order, more than any other city. But its index score declined by less than 1 point. So it's going down a little bit. The quality's going down a little bit. Again, I kind of think that this Economist, they're a little bit of apologists for the West. They would never suggest, Kuala Lumpur. I live in Kuala Lumpur. It's such a livable place. Weather, nice people, amazing healthcare, food. You can get around. Why? Because there actually is a train to the airport. I was thinking, we take a taxi from the airport or something. Like that's what they say in Dublin, Ireland. Oh, there's not a train to the airport. The whole city should be written off. That's what these people. That's their only thing in life is there a train to the airport? Who cares if there's a train to the airport? I'm really getting frustrated. George is getting upset because they're just apologists for these Western cities. Really, Vienna is near perfect. It's a nice place. They can't find a single flaw with Vienna. The rankings of other British cities, including Manchester, London, etc., also declined. London fell by 12 places globally. I don't know. Listen, here's the bottom line. Here's the summary you need to take away. The places, now, of course, they're going to say Singapore's the best. Singapore's harder to immigrate to. But what you're seeing is Asian cities are the primary contenders. They have a separate article, if you want us to talk about this, leave a comment below, where Latin America is having trouble gaining traction. So Latin America is a different story. Asia, I think, for quality of life, I understand the time zone's an issue for some folks. Asia, for me, if you have some resources, one of the most livable places in the world, particularly Southeast Asia, because the higher level of English that's spoken, the weather, etc. And so those places, maybe for different reasons than the Economist's regard, are rising. I would also argue, what's one of the things that really holds people down in terms of enjoying their life is high taxes. And in Europe, even if you earn, 40 or 50,000 euros a year, you're paying a relatively healthy rate in tax. It's not like the US where, okay, you don't pay on this and then it's 10%. It gets to like 40% pretty quickly in a lot of those countries, to where I met someone in Belgium who was like netting 2,000 euros a month. And I'm like, no wonder the rent prices aren't that high. Because, I mean, how do you live on 2,000 euros a month in one of the most expensive places? I guess because you tell yourself, well, we're ranked, number 7 on the list of most livable cities. Yeah, you know what? You could take that money, whatever it is, and you could live a lot better in somewhere in Southeast Asia where they give you a digital nomad visa, or, if you're making a little bit more money, you do what we talk about, you get a residence permit, you've got tax friendliness. I mean, even if you're just a freelancer in Europe, let alone a high earner or a multimillionaire, you could go to a Bangkok, a Kuala Lumpur, a place like that, slash your tax bill, spend less on stuff because there's fewer regulations and less nonsense. And I think that would lead to a lot better life, let alone if you have $1 million income and you put an extra 400 grand in your pocket every year. To me, that has to all be factored into livability. And that is my take on why Europe's getting more competition. I think the fact that some of these countries, listen, there's some nice countries in Europe. I think Switzerland's one of them. Italy and Greece have done some good things on tax. Ireland has some good things on tax. Malta. There's some countries that are worth consideration. But there's more competition than ever. And those politicians in the big Western countries that don't like competition, they're not, generally speaking, being more competitive on things like personal tax or giving you better health care. They're digging their heels in and say that you have to suffer. And I think that doesn't make those cities very livable, especially if you're successful. If you want to find the best cities to live in, Nomad Capitalist helps people. We don't have any dogma about where to live. We help people move to Western Europe. I can't say we've helped anybody move to France, but even Spain has a limited tax incentive. We've helped people move to 31 different tax-friendly countries, might be even a little bit higher now. Help people open bank accounts all over the world. We help people create geographically diversified lives, reduce their taxes, get residences and second passports, all in the ability that you control your life. That's the ultimate livability. So if you want to learn more about how we can help you, go to nomadcapitalist.com.